Christopher Columbus is one of the most pivotal explorers in history, but why was he so determined to conceal his past? Columbus cast a thick veil over his origins, weaving lies about his family's background. But what drove him to do this? Did he have something to hide? And if so, why? Much of his life before his famous voyage across the Atlantic remains a mystery. For instance, no one knows exactly when or how he first came up with the idea to sail westward. But we do know that he spent some time in Iceland. Was this where he heard of a land to the west? Neither Columbus nor his son, Hernando, who wrote a biography of his father after his death, revealed much about their family's history. And the few details they did share, many of them were likely fabrications. Hernando, for example, claimed that their family descended from the illustrious Roman consul family, Colin, that Columbus learned navigation after studying at the University of Padua, and that he wasn't even the first sea captain in the family. However, all three claims are almost certainly pure invention, designed to make the Columbus family appear far more distinguished than they truly were. So, the burning question that many historians wrestle with is, why did Columbus go to such lengths to obscure his past? This is History with Magnus. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe and set for all notifications so you don't miss next time we delve into history. Some historians have suggested that the reason Christopher Columbus consistently obscured his past was that he had Jewish roots. According to this theory, Columbus's family were Jews who had fled Spain for Italy due to the Spanish persecution of Jews. In Italy, they converted to Christianity, which could explain why Columbus was fluent in the Castilian dialect of Spanish even before he arrived in Spain. This might also clarify why Columbus went to great lengths to keep his origins secret, as Jewish persecution in Spain was at its peak when he arrived in 1485. Supporters of the theory also point out that both in the Portuguese and particularly the Spanish courts, Columbus was assisted by people who were either Jewish or Jews who had converted to Christianity in an attempt to escape persecution. Jews were deeply despised across much of Europe, especially in newly unified Spain. Just 4 months before Columbus set sail from Palos, the Spanish monarchs had issued a decree demanding that the country's roughly 200,000 Jews leave by August 3, 1492, the exact day Columbus embarked on his voyage across the Atlantic. At the same time, the ruthless actions of the Spanish Inquisition demonstrated that even newly converted Jews couldn't feel safe. Thousands were burned at the stake, accused of being false Christians. The writer and Nazi hunter Simon Wiesenthal was among those who believed that Columbus's true mission was to find a new land for the Jewish people. For centuries, Jews had passed down myths about several ancient Jewish tribes deported from Israel by the Assyrians, who were said to have settled in Asia and established powerful kingdoms. This could also explain why Columbus brought along a translator who could interpret from Spanish into Hebrew. While most historians dismiss this theory, none have been able to completely disprove it. The story of Columbus truly begins in 1476. At the time, 25-year-old Cristoforo Colombo, as he was known in Italian, claimed that he had decided by the age of 14 that the sea was his destiny. According to his son's writings, in the following years, Columbus sailed to various places, including Iceland, and later captained a ship that, by royal order, attacked Tunis. However, historians have found no evidence that Columbus had ever commanded anything more than a small boat before he famously sailed to the Americas in 1492. He moved to Lisbon and spent 8 years in Portugal. Columbus's brother, Bartolomeo, was a mapmaker with a chart shop in Lisbon where Columbus learned cartography. It wasn't long before he adopted the more Portuguese-sounding name Cristóvão Colombo. One particularly inventive theory even suggests that Columbus may have been an American, a descendant of the Vikings from Vinland in North America who sailed back to Europe and then returned to discover his own continent. It is well known in Iceland that Christopher Columbus arrived there in 1477 and stayed for the winter at a farm called untold, which you can visit today. What we do know is that Vikings from Greenland and Iceland traveled to North America for hundreds of years, up until around the 1400s, trading with the natives and gathering resources such as timber, which was scarce in their homelands. This knowledge would have still been fresh in the minds of the Icelanders, making it not entirely unlikely that Columbus heard of these voyages during his time in Iceland. It is therefore possible that he learned about another continent to the west, giving him the idea that it was possible to cross the ocean to reach another world and another civilization. Columbus therefore might have first conceived of the idea of crossing the Atlantic at this time. Another theory is that Columbus saw a copy of the so-called Vinland map of North America, supposedly drawn 50 years earlier, which depicted areas of North America explored by the Vikings around the year 1000. However, the authenticity of this map is highly debated. Whatever the inspiration, Columbus began reading every geographic text that supported his belief that Asia could be reached by sailing westward, without needing to circumnavigate Africa. He devoured the works of ancient authors. His personal library has survived to this day, allowing us to see over 2,000 notes he scribbled in the margins of his books. For instance, in the margin of an excerpt from the philosopher Aristotle, Columbus wrote, "Between the end of Spain and the beginning of India lies a small sea that can be crossed in a few days." Feeling ever more confident in his project, Columbus sought support from the Portuguese court. He had cultivated connections, including 2 influential Jewish royal physicians who spoke highly of him. In 1484, Columbus was granted an audience with King John II of Portugal. He passionately presented his theory, carefully highlighting Marco Polo's accounts of Asia's immense riches, which, he assured the king, could all be his if he would only fund the expedition. During the meeting, Columbus especially emphasized the island of Cipango, modern-day Japan, which, according to his calculations, was the closest part of Asia to Europe. The king listened, but was unimpressed. The historian Barrows later described King John's reaction when the king realized that Cristobal Colum was a braggart, arrogant about his talents, and full of imagination when describing his island Cipango. He placed very little trust in him. Columbus had gambled and lost. According to the priest Las Casasas, who knew Columbus personally and edited his travel journals after his death, Columbus secretly fled Portugal because he feared that the king would have him detained and hold him back. The exact reason for this fear remains unclear, but in 1485, he crossed the border into Spain. Upon arrival, the now 34-year-old Columbus changed his name once again, becoming Cristobal Colum. The year 1485 was a bloody one in Spain, where Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand had recently established the Spanish Inquisition. That spring, the fires of heretic burning blazed more fiercely than ever before. Columbus was summoned for an audience with the royal couple to present his grand project. A skilled judge of character, Columbus tailored his message to suit each monarch. To the deeply religious Isabella, he portrayed the expedition as a mission to spread Christianity to the peoples of Asia. To the money-driven King Ferdinand, he spoke of the unimaginable wealth to be found on the distant continent. Now, Columbus found himself connected to the Spanish court, forging strong relationships with influential figures, including several powerful conversos who were recently converted Jews who supported his cause whenever possible. One of his key allies was Louis de Saint-Angel, the royal couple's personal advisor. Columbus made a final push for support, and with Saint-Angel's help, he finally secured Queen Isabella's backing. Just before dawn on August 3rd, 1492, Columbus and his crew set sail from the port of Palos, heading west. In the end, Columbus's story is one of profound complexity, from his potential Jewish ancestry to his links with earlier European explorations of the Atlantic Ocean. What we do know for certain is that his voyages reshaped the world, even though the full truth of his life remains as elusive as the horizon he once pursued. Remember to subscribe so you never miss an adventure into the fascinating complexities that shaped the world we know today.